Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Canyon. Welcome back to another installment in the Breakdown series, which whenever I look at a garage, I think, man, how do you intend to get through these? Because if you do one a week, it's going to take a year to do this, so sometimes we double them up. Today, moving down that line of the old ones, the older guard, Misdirection. It's right there on the side. Misdirection got named because, honestly, I sat down to make an episode, started to make that episode, and halfway through, I was like, that title was a misdirect. A misdirect, a misdirect, a misdirection. And that is how we ended up with Misdirection. Misdirection is a continuation, an extension of our policy of using all parts of the Buffalo. This is Zoidberg's cage from the Capra kit that I bought many, many moons ago. The Capra kit that I bought that was the germination of the channel, because I was carrying that tiny little axial flat box. About around the same size that a VRD carbon comes in. I was carrying that Capra kit box in the house, and that was when the wife pulled me aside and said, we need to talk about this because I've seen this pattern before. And what you're going to need to do is figure out a way to make this pay for itself. And that is why we are all collectively here now. This cage was in a box in the Capra kit, $249.99. Back in the days when, yes, you could get a Capra for $249.99. And what's crazier than that? Currently, Yukio, who will be covered in one of these episodes much later, I have to presume, bears the panels that originally came on this cage when it was Zoidberg. These are indeed Zoidberg's shocks, and one of only half a dozen rigs, if it's even that. Off the top of my head, I can only think of 4. I can think of 4 vehicles in the fleet. 5? 4, 5. It's definitely, maybe countable on one hand, that are still running axial shocks. Our FJ40s, Jade and Sheila, run on SEX10 Pro 100mm shocks. These are stock Capra shocks. And I want to say the Vanimal is on stock Capra shocks as well. And RoboKitty, the Rift Crawler, is on stock Rift shocks. And I got very lucky with those because they do not leak. And I have gotten modestly lucky with these. Like that's a little slow on the damping, but they are conventionally right side up mounted Capra shocks. So they're probably about half full. This is the configuration. Misdirection is the configuration where I think the Capra sings. I think the Capra is better suited at its existent wheelbase, which is about 313. I think it is best suited to a straight axle and a tire that's a little bit taller. Around a 5-inch tire and a straight axle. I didn't really enjoy the Capra in its factory configuration on the Capra portals with the 475 tires. I didn't really like it. So that was how Zoidberg came to be born. And then these parts sat. And then one of the longtime members and supporters of the channel designed these little plates right here and had them cut at send, cut, send. And basically what they do is they have holes there to adapt the plates, to adapt the skid for an element. And that is a Bauhaus skid for element. And atop that Bauhaus skid for element is a Stealth X. There's a Stealth X in there with the motor plate facing rear. And Misdirection is definitely the only one still in the fleet that Outrunner is a Flash Hobby drone motor with the 5mm shaft that comes out with no flat on it. So you get a Dremel and some files and you turn a flat on it, which is why if we can get it into focus in there, there is a pinion. There it is. Oh, I had it just, oh, look at that. Perfect. There's a pinion, Robinson hardened with the 5 millimeter bore. And I believe it's a 1256 on the gearing, because that is, as I said, a drone motor. So it has no what they call back iron. So usually on these, it's difficult to get that same level of drag brake out of them because there's just physically less mass to the motor. But what that translates to is Misdirection, and that is an AG Innovations Ninja, yet another Ninja. I think I ended up buying 3 or 4 of them at the time. And last I had checked, I believe the man behind AG Innovations commented on a video some few months ago to say, wow. He was like, I haven't seen one of my speaker controls out because I do not believe that he produces them anymore. So I have had 0 issues with any of them, and any one that I have ever purchased is still in service today. There are none in the drawer. And I always know that it's a Ninja because when I look up in there, I can see blue of the giant 10 amp Castle BEC that we're using to run everything, because the Ninjas did not have an internal BEC. Did not and do not. I made the panels. And I don't know explicitly why, because at one point Zoidberg had copper panels. I had cut panels out of copper and put them on this cage. And I think I misplaced the original plastic panels, the ones that are on Yukio. And I found those about 3 months ago while doing bin reorganization and restructuring. So I wanted to remove the copper from this. I knew I wanted her to be orange. I don't remember why, but I know that I wanted her to be orange. So I went to Amazon. I think I went to Amazon and I looked up the price of a set of replacement panels, and it was $33 for 2 of these, 1 of these, and 1 of these. And I was like, absolutely not. So I went on, I did another Amazon search and I said, what can you do for me in 16th inch Lexan, aka, or polycarbonate, aka Lexan? And they were like, oh, that's like $9. So I was like, $9, you say? So I took the copper panels, and these are actually not copies of the stock ones. The copper ones were copies of the stock ones, and these are copies of the copper ones. So this is a Xerox moment, a copy of a copy. And I just made them, and then I bent the nose down because I thought that little bent piece in the front would look good. And I agree with what I thought then, because I do like how that looks. So, of course, there's no, these are flat, and the roof is flat. I think I heat bent that a little bit of heat gun to get that edge down. And then it was Duplicolor vinyl and fabric silver as a base to give me a bonding base. Did I even paint them on the inside? What are they? Yep. And then outside that, Krylon Farm and Implement Husqvarna Orange. And that is the extent of the painting that I did. And as you can see, it patinas in exactly as one would hope it would. And if you're running wheels this big, you don't tend to put the tires. Nothing is really getting in here because it can't get past the tires. Blackouts, good old blackout wheels. And these are nonsensically blacked out wheels because, as you know, you can get black scale hardware, and at the time that I assembled these, I don't think that you could. So I went on Amazon and I ordered bags of 2mm hardware, and I probably spent like $20 on black hardware. And I've done a couple sets of blackout wheels, and I feel like this is the set that I spent the most on. Is that? Yeah, this is definitely purchased. This bracket. I don't know who did that bracket, but it looks too nice to be one of mine. So whoever I can give credit to making for that bracket, absolute fantastic job. I want to say that the Flash Hobby Outrunner is somewhere in the low to mid. It might be a 1700. It might be a 1400 and change, 1500 and change, something like that. They're fairly small. I want to say they list them as a 3630. I don't think you can look down far enough the barrel to see it down there. These are, of course, Rover EX from Hotbod HPI/HB. These are the pink dot, and these are the stock foams that come in them. The very squishy squishable. And on that stock squishy squishable, you can see, I call them beach balls because look how wide they are. And you get basically no tread noise, no lug chatter, and no wear to go along with it. Misdirection is heavier than she looks, around 6 pounds, and it is very much done in the Canyon fashion. Like I truly do enjoy the way it came out. It is still the stock element shafts, stock element housings. Haven't even replaced the element C-hubs. They're not even nutted, so they've never even tried to slip because, and on BTA too. Does she even have a caster flip? Yes, she is caster flip. She's on top. And just an absolute hodgepodge of whatever we can get to fit. I want to say these rear lowers are Traxxas. Front lowers are really big. I'm not sure what those are. Front uppers are hollow. Those are definitely aluminum. Rear uppers are aluminum as well, with some spacers on them. There is a link riser in the back. And if anyone has the question, and there's the delete to get rid of the fuel cell out of the back, because the links go basically right where the fuel cell is. If anybody has a reason or is asking, what is the reason? Why are you running a link riser on that and you don't run a link riser on many? The spacing at mount on axle side for the lower link and the upper link, that spacing is generally about 20% of the height of the tire. So when you go to a tire that is suitably larger, these are I'd call them 525s. They're about 5 1/4. When that spacing goes up, we know that the axle spacing on that is kind of fudged because Element uses the same link spacing on what's the smallest one they do? 393, 376, 393? Then 419, 475. They run the same link split across a whole range of tires, and most manufacturers do. But that means that stock axle spacing is really well suited to one of those tires and then not as well suited to the rest. So we can get away with a little bit of hybridization because I want to say the Oklahoma design plates give us alternate link mounting positions. So we have much better link spread at the axle and at the chassis. I think these are KYX. I don't know. I got them really cheap off of Amazon. One of the very first things I bought because I was like, those look cool. And then I found out that they are purely cosmetic and they don't do anything at all performance-wise. But I had already drilled the holes and I still think they look kind of cool. And they don't increase how low things are to the rocks. So it doesn't really matter. So her all of her geo is an accident. We arrived here purely by throwing parts at it and finding out what would stick. 45 kg flash hobby in the front, which turns out to be plenty. As I said, AG Innovations Ninja, the flash hobby drone motor. Of course, there's a Radiolink RC4 on it, unless we need more channels. And she's running, I think it's 12%. She's running 12% rear underdrive via the Stealth X. No fancy bits in the axles. And she has enjoyed somehow, I don't know if it's because that motor is slightly underpowered. I don't know what it is specifically, but she has enjoyed a career of basically no parts breakages that I can think of, other than I see that the little dental rubber bands that we had used, my wife braided their hair. I don't know how to do that. The little rubber bands have all popped and now their hair is starting to get kind of wild back there. I bought $11 worth of Barbies on Amazon, decapitated them and threw their bodies away, and still feel kind of weird about it. I feel like there's a turn that you take in the toy car, in the pursuit of toy cars, where I've decapitated 2 blockheads too. I've decapitated a lot of children's toys and reserved only the heads. And I get, they're right. It does get easier because I had qualms and concerns when I was decapitating those Barbies because you basically I took a pair of dykes and I cut their heads off, and by that I mean I literally cut their heads off. And then when it came to doing a rig called Gumby, which we'll get a breakdown to later, when I got to doing Gumby, I just took those blockheads and I cut their heads off. And sometimes those are the things that happen. So Misdirection, one of the olders, is a real bona fide example of the canyon method, which is the cage Zoidberg as the Capra. And you could make an argument. Like, what makes what? I would say that there's more of the original Capra, which I turned to four-wheel steer and et cetera, et cetera. I would say that there's maybe more of that original Capra here because we have full cage and all the shocks than there are, and the interior, than there is on Zoidberg now, who was also the original Capra. We use all the parts. Nothing goes to waste. Because whatever is left over and what is off to the side just gets turned into something else. So you might ask, where did all the element bits come from? I have no idea. I wish I could answer that question for you, but I cannot. I have no recollection. It's not what is now Ghost or Ghost. So there are they're almost like trios, little triumvirates, where Zoidberg and Misdirection and someone else combined to throw parts together. Jake the Snake and Yella share this kind of same commonality. And then Gate Rover and Ghost Rover are kind of these two. And then Ghost Rover and Argentum. Basically what I'm trying to say, if we were going to say it in the shortest possible terms, which is not a thing we do around here, 6 degrees of separation is an amount that I think we seldom get to, because Ghost Rover has Argentum's original kit body on there. That is 1 degree of separation. And then Argentum will have a part from this guy, and this is the cage from the rig that became Zoidberg. And these are the shocks that were on Zoidberg. And the axles came from somebody, I don't know who. And I'm sure that all of the elements here, there might be some Yella in here. Some of this might be Yella, because Yella was an RTR Ecto, but he's now on SSDs. So where did his axle housings go? And where did we get the parts for the... Those are all lost to the sands of time. And it's gotten to the point where the breakdowns are as much for archival information for myself as they are for anything else. She's been on those same tires for quite a long time. When we got to the Rover EX and I ran the test on them, I do somewhat vividly remember that I was like, oh, I know exactly where these are going, and I don't feel like I was wrong. I still say, if you're buying them today, buy white Rovers. The performance advantage of the pink is basically negligible, and the pinks cost 30% more than the white dot Rovers. The white dot Rovers left here on a rig named Legs, which was another just collaboration and coalition of handfuls of parts to turn it into something. And Misdirection is great. Misdirection is kind of the way I think the Capra should be, unless you're building something like I've got the Economoo and Yukio that are kind of what I would have liked the Capra to have been out of the box. There's a question that I'm going to answer for myself more than anyone else. The Capra and the H10 Optic and many others have equal length lower links, and I do not Bushido. I do not believe that equal length lower links is remarkably conducive to rock crawling, and I want to say that these are probably going to be very close. They are very close. They are about It's 3 millimeters. We're about 3 millimeters different between front and rear lowers. So I say to myself, I would have to take Misdirection out there and drive her around on the rocks for some not inconsiderable amount of time, and then say to myself, is it worth it to you to extend all those rear links? I would say 12 millimeters. About 12 millimeters from between 12 and 15 millimeters for the, like, that performance will increase because it will increase stability. But it's also going to hurt breakover. And it's going to mess up a balance that we've kind of gotten here to achieve. And much like others that we've broken down in the past, sometimes it's not all about making the absolute line-devouring monster. It is, they all need, if you go to an ice cream shop and you look through the little glass down at those big buckets of ice cream, you don't want all of them to, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Hey, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Whatever your favorite flavor is, I think mine is probably like, I had one that was called Cappuccino Crunch at a place I don't remember, we were somewhere, and I had Cappuccino Crunch ice cream, and I was like, man, that's really good, because I like coffee flavor and I like chocolate flavor, and that's really excellent. I would not want to go to to an ice cream shop and look through and all of the buckets are Cappuccino Crunch, because sometimes you want like a chocolate, or sometimes you want some of this, or sometimes butter pecan, butter. You want variety, spicing life. Misdirection is part of that variety of the spice of life, and I think it's great. I think it's great. She's fun to drive. She passes the test. She sparks joy. So why do we need to try? Once something sparks joy, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's that kind of thing. And she comfortably fits the 2200 battery. And if I can, I will run a 2200 battery. I consider the 2200 3S arbitrarily to be kind of the perfect battery for tiny toy cars that go slow tasks, because I have too many of these little 850s in here. And I appreciate the runtime of this. And I don't like to have to run this and everything. I mean, this is a very selective purpose thing. And I really am uncomfortable running anything smaller than an 850. So, checks boxes, right? Tires work great. Shocks are acceptable. The motor combo, it does the job somehow. It doesn't need to be upgraded and have more money thrown at it. So, Misdirection is great. And there's a thread among a group of 4. There's a thread that runs through that group, which is Ghost Rover, Jake, Yella, and Misdirection. They're all in a row parked right next to each other. And it is that they are, aside from breakages and failures, they are as they are in terms of tires, body, electronics, their outfit, their layout. I don't see a need to change them because they all scratch a different itch. And I think, at least for me, that's a big part of the point of establishing a fleet and building more of them. Because if I'm building another one, I want that other one to answer an unasked question, to fill a role. And it's much like when I'm doing the Class 1.5 guys, the crawlercanyon, CC 1.5. When I'm doing those, I want to see, what is it like 1.5 on portals? What is it like 1.5 on a mullet? What is it like 1.5 with this body versus this body? They're all answering some different question. I've never been struck with the desire to try to build the same thing twice, except for the obvious one, which will be in a breakdown probably sooner than later, where I did strive to make the exact same thing twice. So look forward to that. Look forward to all the things. I look forward to you guys having a fantastic day. If you weren't having one before, I hope you're having a fantastic day now. And in the future, I would advise that you do your very best to try to have a fantastic day, everybody. Do your very best to have a good one. We will see you in the next one with whatever that happens to be. Thank you so much for joining us here in the canyon. We will see you. It might not be us. I don't think she's touched rock in 6 months, but it'll be somebody.